Good afternoon, conference. Thanks very much also for your kind words. People will see that I've got a battery-powered heart device. If you hear it beeping, don't worry. It just means I need to change the battery. If you hear a loud alarm, feel free to rush to my aid. I'm not expecting there to be a loud alarm. Can I say that being the only Duracell-powered General Secretary on the TUC, it has been pointed out to me that some of my colleagues could do with a few batteries as well. And maybe the content of my speech today will help wake some people up to what we definitely need to consider in this movement. But I want to start also where Janice started, which is to thank all of you in this room, most of you here on your own time, practically demonstrating to the Tories and the employers that you care so much about the members that you represent, you're prepared to come down to Brighton and take your own time to do it. That is a marvellous commitment. It's a disgrace that you have to do that, and it's a disgrace that other unions like Prospect are given facility time for their delegates to attend their civil service conference. It's an example of double standards, and it's an example that we need to take up with the Cabinet Office. But I also hope you go back to your branches and workplaces and thank your colleagues who aren't here. Reps are the lifeblood of this union. As I'm going to go on and explain, if we don't get more reps and more participation in the union, then we're going to have a difficult 5 years indeed. But I'm confident we can do that. And conference, let me also say I am confident that we will have fraternal debates this week. The way to answer all our differences is to discuss them at this conference and make majority decisions. I'll be speaking later on the finance decisions on behalf of the NEC, but I just want to say this to everyone. The Tories' objective was to bankrupt PCS and remove us from the trade union map. People should be in no doubt that they believed they could smash PCS and the viability of the union was at stake. I hope we can all agree that whatever our disagreements, the fact that PCS is still standing and will become healthier and healthier with the passage of time is one of the biggest blows we've struck to Francis Maude. We are here long after he has been sent packing, and let's hope we'll be saying the same about Oliver Letwin, Matthew Hancock, and all the rest of the public schoolboys. So, conference, let's analyse the attacks that we've faced. When I was in this hall as a young delegate in 1983, we were under a Thatcher government. Thatcher recognised that she needed to dismantle the trade union movement and the working class communities where most of us came from. She attacked the miners, she attacked manufacturing industry, she introduced anti-union laws in an attempt to make us more ineffective. And conference, what David Cameron plans to do goes even further than what Margaret Thatcher was able to carry out in the 1980s. The end to check-off, the attacks on facility time, mass privatisation of our public services are all things the Tories are planning to bring on us. Yesterday's Financial Times, with a front page demonstrating that they plan to make 100,000 civil service job cuts, is truly chilling. We already have the smallest civil service since the Second World War, and if we have 100,000 job cuts, it will be smaller than at any time as a proportion of public sector employment. And that's what they're planning. And that's why, let's be clear, they want to change the union balloting laws. They don't want to change the balloting laws to have more people voting ballots to make them more democratic. They want to change the balloting laws to stop us from going on strike. If that was not the case, they would agree to workplace balloting, electronic balloting and telephone voting, which we know in some cases could treble the turnout in ballots. So the Tories don't want more people to vote. They actually don't want there to be any strikes. And it's not surprising, because with millions using food banks, with going around the streets of Brighton and seeing homeless people who do not have adequate access to housing, seeing poverty, privatisation and wage cuts, we know why they don't want us to strike, because they wish to unleash a tax on us the like that we have never seen before. And faced with that, we've got a choice. We can decide there's nothing that can be done, or we can decide we're going to do whatever it takes to resist these attacks, and that includes the anti-union legislation that is coming our way. But conference, unlike others in our movement, we do not say that a change in the ballot laws to introduce thresholds of 50% of all eligible members voting means it's impossible to have strikes. To be honest, if you think it's impossible to get more than 50% voting, we may as well pack up now. It is not impossible. And we can see that demonstrated already in this union and elsewhere. Next week, we will see the first national rail strike in this country for over 20 years. Members of the RMT voted by 80% in favour of a strike on a 60% turnout. They smashed the Tories' new ballot thresholds, and I believe we will all be supporting them next week because RMT members deserve fairer pay. But you know, in our own union, we've done it. In the National Gallery, 94% yes for strike action, 62% turnout. At Windsor Castle, 84% for action short of a strike on an 82% turnout. And we have many other examples too. It shows it can be done when we get members involved and when we are able to persuade them to participate in the ballots. But what we've never managed to do is replicate that on a national scale. And let me make an appeal to all delegates, that whatever motions we carry this week, whatever action we believe we need to take, if we cannot get over the threshold, there will not be the action that we so desperately need. And therefore the gauntlet has been thrown down and we have to challenge it, because we have never got more than 50% of members voting in any national ballot since the formation of PCS. The highest we've ever done is 42.5% in 2004, and in every other ballot that's gone down slightly. And therefore, Conference, that is the scale of the challenge. Get more members to vote, or find that the courts will be used against us if we attempt to go on strike. And that's why I hope Conference can agree with the NEC, that faced with these new challenges, and faced with the option to fight or just accept the most draconian cuts, then we cannot just stand still and do things in the way that we've always done them. The strategic review launched by the National Executive Committee is designed to ensure that we can make the changes to ensure we get more members participating, more reps in the workplace, more able to deliver the type of campaigns we've seen in the gallery and in the land registry and other workplaces where we are putting up a real fight, and in some cases we have won. And it is right, therefore, that we review everything we do. Review it to make us stronger, to learn the lessons of what works well, but to also accept that we have got weaknesses. There is nothing wrong with accepting that the union has its weak areas as well as its strong areas. In fact, we should be prepared to do everything we can to level everybody upwards. And that's why, Conference, we need a very honest debate about the environment we are now in. I'm sad to report, but we have seen the first instances in recent months of some of our so-called sister unions in other TUC affiliates actually arguing and acting not just against the interests of the trade union movement, but specifically against PCS. It cannot be right that when you write to every union in the country asking them to support us in our efforts to resist the Tories' union-busting strategies, that two of our sister unions in the civil service write back to us and tell us not only will they not support us, but we deserve what we get because we have brought it upon ourselves. Now, it's a funny old world when your colleagues in the trade union movement blame the victims for trying to defend themselves against the aggression of the people who are in power. We should be proud of the fact that we are resisting, and we should say it is a disgrace that the FDA and Prospect leaderships, not their members, I don't believe that for a minute, have written to us in such an outrageous way. And management are going to try and build on that division. They will try and exploit the formation of a so-called trade union in revenue and customs. They will attempt to set up staff associations and bogus methods of consultation in order to bypass PCS. Don't take my word for it. Read the document from HMRC management that's set out in chilling detail a strategy to bust the union and to make us less relevant. And the most key point of that document wasn't just that it said victimize the reps, marginalize the union, but it went on to say they should start in the areas where PCS had the lowest levels of membership, recognizing that for them to do what they want to do, they would start picking on us where we were not as strong. Now, the only answer to that can be we can't run away. It has to be to say we want to make everywhere as strong. We want high levels of membership everywhere. We want high levels of representatives. And that's why, Conference, I think we've shown them in the last 6 months, with our response to direct debit, that we have done things that nobody thought possible. Because of your efforts, because of the efforts of your colleagues, members, and the staff of this union, we have achieved in our biggest departments 80% of members signing up to pay by direct debit. No other union in the TUC has ever got near that rate of sign-up in such a short period of time. In the Home Office, we got to 84% of people signing up in the most difficult circumstances when the employer was seeking to deny us access to members in the workplace and where they were acting in a hostile way. So do you know what? It shows we can do it. But it also shows, no matter how well we have done, we are still on course to lose thousands and thousands of members of PCS. Because even if we get 80% of people signing up, it means we have lost 20% of members. That is not just £6.5 million worth of income, but in some departments, it takes us either below or dangerously near derecognition levels where we will have less than 50% of the workforce. I don't think it takes much imagination to believe that the Tories would love to derecognise PCS in government departments. So the answer's in our hands. Keep up the work on DD, sign more people up to the union, and send the strongest possible message to the government. And that means I think we need to turn now to the general election. You know, we wouldn't be human if not each and every one of us in this room was not desperately disappointed at 10:01 on election night when the exit polls came out. No one was expecting a majority Conservative government. Not even the Conservatives were expecting it. It's a commentary on just how weak the opposition, particularly Labour, were in that election, in my opinion, that they did not offer hope and inspiration. But you know, the message of that election is not so much that the Tories won, is that Labour lost it by refusing to advocate anti-austerity politics. And where those politics were advocated, we saw that people voted for it. In Scotland, the SNP, despite what we think about their record in office, were portrayed to be an anti-austerity party, and they swept the board. John McDonnell, who we'll hear from tomorrow, the most left-wing Labour MP by a country mile, has turned a seat that was a marginal. At one time, only 54 was the majority of the sitting MP, into a majority now of 15,700. John McDonnell hasn't achieved that by saying we need to be more aspirational, we need to be more right-wing. He has achieved it because he stood up for his constituents and he supported every strike and campaign this union has ever had. I hope you agree. I hope you agree that John McDonnell, if there was more people like him, we may well have had a very different election result. But conference, there aren't more John McDonnells, unfortunately, at the moment, or indeed there are very few like him. That is why we hope this week you will overwhelmingly endorse the motions to the conference that call for a campaign for proportional representation. You know, we've long had a policy of proportional representation. I'm now happy to say that by the day, more and more people in very senior positions across our movement are now coming to the conclusion that it is PR we need. It is PR we need to have a fairer electoral system, but crucially from our point of view, not because we just believe in abstract fairness, because it would be through a system of PR that we could genuinely see anti-austerity politics take a foothold in this country in the way that it has done right across Europe. You need a fair voting system to do that. You need people prepared to advocate radical politics, and we need to campaign for both in this country. And I can tell you, even last week, the General Secretary of the TUC told me that she has just been converted to be in favour of proportional representation. I believe there will be many other union leaders that will follow suit. If we can launch a broad-based campaign, we may be able in the next few years to genuinely see the type of politics that we want to see. And therefore, conference, I want to turn and finish now on the question of not just the political arena, but what PCS itself needs to do. Because I hope you agree with us that this week we need to have the debates, but most importantly, we need to commit ourselves to opposing the cuts, the closures of the offices, the privatisations, and the further attacks that we're expecting on pensions and on public sector pay. Now, some people believe, and indeed they've said it to us, that if you are nicer to the government, if you appear to be more reasonable, then you may get what you want. Well, it wasn't being nice that saved the land registry from privatisation. It was the brilliant campaign run by PCS, our members and our reps, including strike action and incredibly high levels of membership participation, that won the day. It wasn't by being nice that the civil service is still 40,000 people more in it than the coalition wanted at the start of their terms in office. It wasn't by being nice that we got 1,200 new jobs in the Passport Office. It wasn't by being nice that in DWP in Garston, after a heroic strike, we were able to find solutions for members whose office was closing that nearly all of them saw as a significant victory for the union. And it wasn't by being nice that in HMRC Dundee, by being prepared to take industrial action, we obtained 39 full-time permanent jobs for fixed-term contract staff who were due to be made redundant. Being nice had nothing to do with it. We won in all those cases because we were prepared to do something, because members participated in the campaigns, and because our reps were active in the workplace and they showed PCS at its best. That is what we now need to replicate in the period ahead. But we will also need to urge our colleagues in other unions to step up to the plate. We all know that the big lesson of the last government was that the unity we had on pensions in 2011 did not last long enough, and the government were able to pick off those unions who weren't prepared to carry on campaigning. We need to this time not just call for united, coordinated action across the trade union movement, but it needs to be united in every sense. Common demands, common negotiations and common industrial action strategies, which means that the Tories cannot pick off one against another, but they have to deal with us as a whole. And there are some in the union movement who support that point of view. I want to pay tribute to our colleagues in the Trade Union Coordinating Group, 8 national trade unions, including the NUT and the FBU, amongst others, who we work very closely with. But you know, I also want to pay tribute to our colleagues in Unite. Now, one of the big regrets I had last year was that while you were debating the Unite motion, I was in a haze on morphine in my hospital bed. But Janice, ever thoughtful, decided to send me the DVD of the conference debate. 2 days after I came out of the morphine haze, I watched the debate. I immediately asked to go back on the morphine and have my dose doubled. Now, the point is, if we're talking about pain relief, however, that Unite have been prepared to offer us some real pain relief. Because in solidarity with the attack we faced from the Tories, Len McCluskey has written to me to say that Unite will waive the rent that we pay them in all of our offices, which means it's a £194,000 donation in effect to PCS. Now, colleagues, that is practical solidarity. And I hope the leaders of the FDA and Prospect take notice, because while they wish to hide and blame us for what's going on, our real friends in the movement are offering us really support. So conference, let's go from Brighton, determined, inspired, believing that we can win. Let's take inspiration from our members at the National Museums in Scotland, our colleagues in the Computer Sciences Corporation, our members at the National Gallery, who tomorrow will take their 24th day of strike action, followed by a further 10 days of action in the weeks ahead. Let's be inspired by the wins we've had in court, in the National Audit Office and in the Department for Transport. Let's be inspired by our achievements on direct debit. Let's be inspired by one of the bright moments in the general election, which is the defeat of that nasty woman, Esther McVey. Because the defeat of Esther McVey, in a constituency, by the way, which had one of the highest turnouts outside of Scotland, shows that when we work together and focus our attention, we actually can win. It's a shame there wasn't that type of campaign in other parts of the UK. So we should be inspired, we should have belief, and we should be determined. And as one person said to me 2 weeks ago, as a sort of slight change to the old saying, is if you want to win a fight, you've got to be prepared to be in one. Well, I hope everyone here is prepared to be in a fight. I hope everyone's prepared to fight like never before. I hope we're prepared to embrace the changes we need to get more activity, more participation, learning from the inspiration of those who are taking action and applying it across the board. You know, colleagues, if we do that, then we can lead in this movement and we can indeed look forward to a future with some confidence. If we don't do it, if we look inward, our families, ourselves and our communities will regret it for generations to come. I know you're up for the fight. We're up for the fight. Let's go together in unity to make sure the Tories do not get away with their despicable attacks. Thanks very much.